Hello everyone, welcome back to another GIS mathematics lecture video. And in this lecture video, I want to continue our discussion on reduced row echelon form. And what I want to do before we get into this module or this video's topic is recap two important things from the previous videos. The first is this idea of elementary row operations. And so to recap, right, elementary row operations were basically just the things that we could do to a matrix that don't change the relationships. Right, again, thinking about the relationships in terms of these linear equations, right? We can multiply a row by a scalar, we can add rows together, and we can change the position of rows. Right, these are the three things we can do that don't break the matrix. As long as we're only doing these three things, we're good. The second thing I want to recap is this idea of what it means to be in reduced row echelon form. Right? What is our end goal? Right? Our end goal is the first non-zero element in every row to be a 1. We called that a leading 1. This term is going to be important. The second, each leading 1 is to the right of the leading 1 in the rows above it. The third was any row of all zeros is at the bottom. And the fourth is any column with a leading 1 has zeros everywhere else in the column. Okay? So if this 2-second review didn't immediately make sense to you, if you don't have a really solid understanding of the elementary row operations and what it means to be in reduced row echelon form, I highly encourage you to go back and watch the previous videos until you have a really solid understanding of those two concepts, because we're going to be utilizing those two concepts in what we're going to do in this video. And so what we're going to do in this video is we're going to talk about how do we actually convert a matrix into reduced row echelon form. Oops. Right, how do we actually convert a matrix into reduced row echelon form? Okay? And so the way we do this is through a series of 6 steps. And this is going to be a little bit of iteration. And if you don't understand what iteration means, basically iteration just means go back and redo some steps until you hit a condition. Okay, and we'll go through this and that will make more sense in a second. Okay, so what do? The first thing we do, right, is working from left to right. Right, identify the first non-zero column you have not already worked on. Right, the second is working from top to bottom. Find the first row you haven't worked on. Okay. So if that element is a 0, right, exchange that whole row with the row below it. Right, so this is one of those elemental row operations, right? We can exchange the position of two rows, right? So if you find the first row that you haven't worked on, if that element is 0, you exchange it. So assuming it's not 0, right? Or once you've done this, right, you multiply the current row by a scalar to create a leading one. Right, again, this is that other elementary row operation, right? You can multiply any row by a scalar. So you're going to figure out what scalar you need to multiply so that that, element that you were considering will be a leading one. Okay? The fourth thing you're going to do is you're going to use row operations right, that adding two rows together, swapping positions, multiplying by scalars, right, you're going to use those operations to place zeros under that leading one. So this is the part where we get to iteration. Right, 5 is going to be repeat steps 1 through 4 until all rows and columns have been worked on. Right, this is iteration. This is the definition of iteration. We're going back and we're doing 1 through 4, 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 until all of the rows and columns have been worked on. Okay? So, if we did this correctly, right, if we did this right, we should now meet the first 3 criteria of reduced row echelon form, right? The first element in every row, the first non-zero element in every row should be a leading one. That's what steps 1 through 3 did. Right? Every leading one should now be to the right of a leading one before it. Right? Because we're switching the zeros around, right? The bottom, any rows of zeros should make it to the bottom. So if we do this correctly, we should meet the first 3 criteria of reduced row echelon form. And then finally, step 6, right? Working from right to left. Use row operations to place zeros above leading ones. Okay? So if you follow these 6 steps, including this iteration step here, you will hopefully end up in a place where you have a reduced row echelon form matrix. So just to sort of recap, right, the first thing we're going to do is figure out what column to work on. The second thing we're going to do is figure out what row to work on. So that combination of row and column will give us an element, right? If that element is 0, we're going to flip the whole row with the row below it. We're going to keep doing that until we have a non-zero element there. Then we're going to figure out what we need to multiply that element by to make it a leading one, and we're going to multiply the whole row by that scalar. Right? Then we're going to use row operations to place zeros underneath that leading one. Then we're going to repeat those steps until we have every row and column worked on. Then we're going to go back and use row operations to place zeros above that leading one, those leading ones. I know this is a lot of text. I hope this made sense. We're going to go through a lot of examples to hopefully make this concrete. And if you have any questions, please reach out. Thank you.